Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for clicking on this week's episode of Rank the Movies. Last week, I talked about 6 movies I saw for the first time in 2020. This week, I've got 5 more for you, and next week, I'm rolling that all in with my all-time favorite movie I saw in 2020. So, as you know, last week, we talked about The Exorcist. We talked about Virtuosity. We talked about Detention. We talked about Flash Gordon. We talked about The Hunt, and we talked about Freaked, and those were in the wrong order. But it doesn't matter, because this week's a new week, and we've got 5 new movies to talk about. So let's jump straight in and talk about, much like The Exorcist and Flash Gordon, a movie I can't believe I saw. I waited until 2020 to finally sit down with. It is the John Carpenter classic, They Live, starring WWF superstar, the Hot Rod, Rowdy Roddy Piper. It also stars Community star Keith David. Keith David. He's on Community. Community is my favorite TV show. Hence why I went that route. It would have been a lot better if I had just said Keith David right away. Alright. So, They Live is about Roddy Piper is a homeless man who is kind of drifting. I don't know if he's homeless, but he's definitely a drifter. He ends up going into joining a construction crew where he is brought to a tent city. He lives there. Eventually, he finds a church across the street, and in it he finds a pair of sunglasses. These sunglasses allow him to see the world as it is, which is being controlled by aliens. He sees what the aliens really look like, and when they're through these shades, you can see what the aliens really look like, even though they have human disguises on. He sees billboards for what they really are, which is just subliminal advertising, and what they're actually subliminally advertising. And he begins to want to help fight against these aliens who are trying to corrupt our world. That is the basic premise of the movie. That is its basic plot thread without going into the beats. There's a great, long, drawn-out fight scene between Roddy Piper and Keith David, where Piper is just trying to get Keith David to put on the damn sunglasses so he won't think Roddy Piper is crazy anymore. It's a great scene. Like, these guys choreographed which for Roddy Piper isn't that big of a thing. He's a pro wrestler. Keith David is not a stuntman. But they choreographed this huge fight scene. It's like long and drawn out. It actually seems like a pretty legit fight scene. Like, this is how you would probably fight somebody else. Because, like, outside of the 1 or 2 wrestling moves Roddy Piper kind of worked into it, it's basically like, you know, you fight for a little bit, you breathe heavy, and then you start fighting again. It is a great movie. They Live is a lot of fun. If you've never seen it before, definitely check this one out. Alright, next up we have the only animated movie on this entire list, and I'm surprised that it made it, because I did not want to watch it originally. It is Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. This is the final movie in the DC animated universe continuity, at least the main continuity that started with Justice League The Flashpoint Paradox, and has overencompassed multiple movies each year since that one's release. They have released some standalone films, such as The Killing Joke, but this one is the ending of that series. And I gotta admit, a lot of the series, especially like the Justice League movies and the Batman solo films, have really been hit and miss for me. Some of them are really good, and other ones are like, eh. I was shocked at how much I enjoyed this movie, and how much it packed into an hour and a half, given the fact it is an Infinity War's Endgame kind of movie. You know, and that one's like 5 damn hours plus to get through that entire story. This one's an hour and a half, and does a really good job telling that kind of story. Basically, Darkseid, the ruler of Apocalypse, is planning to invade Earth, which makes sense, because the second movie in the series is Justice League War, which is Apocalypse, or Darkseid beginning to try to take over the Earth. So this is him trying to do it again. The Justice League decides to fly out to Apocalypse and take this threat on head on, basically using the element of surprise to defeat Darkseid. It does not work. There's a lot of captured people, and a lot of people die, and that's just what happens. A lot of heroes get captured or died. The movie then jumps a couple of years into the future. I can't remember exactly how many, but it jumps a couple of years into the future. You're not actually shown the fight. You're shown parademons initially breaking into one of the ships that the Justice League is on, and then it jumps into the future. John Constantine and Etrigan the Demon are drinking in a bar in a wasteland because now Apocalypse. Darkseid rules the Earth. It's now a suburb of Apocalypse, and it's just what happens. Superman and crap, my brain just died on me on heroes' names at this exact moment, because I want to say Zatanna, but Zatanna is not it. It is Raven. Superman and Raven show up. You find out Superman has had his Superman emblem tattooed on his chest in kryptonite, so he is basically human. They are trying to talk Constantine into helping them because they need someone who can do magic, because Raven's ties to her father, Trigon, is weakening her as they try to defeat Darkseid, who has enslaved various members of the Justice League to work for him, including Batman, who is now his top strategist. With that, the movie continues on, and you get to see some other, the Suicide Squad gets brought in to try to help the heroes, and other heroes are, and there's just a really interesting movie that really does play on the idea of, the finality in it. Because it does end very dark, it has a very final ending, where the entire thing, you find out the Flash, who started this whole thing with the Flashpoint, is left to do it again. Go back and create a new Flashpoint to actually reset everything. Because at the end of the movie, out of the entire DC universe, which over the course of this world building they have done, they have introduced most of the heroes of the DC universe in one way, shape, or form. It's left to about a dozen. There's about a dozen people who survive to the end of this movie. And most of them are deformed, are injured. Nightwing has been brought back through a Lazarus pit, so he is not, mentally there. He's in a straitjacket. And so it's up to him to reset the balance and reset the world and let a new timeline happen for everyone. It's a very good movie. I highly suggest it if you like the DC animated movies. This, bar none, 2020 my favorite animated movie, clearly, and my favorite superhero movie, oddly enough, because I do like the fact that it was able to fit this entire complex story in an hour and a half. I really do like that, because I like when you can do a complex story in an hour and a half instead of just like a simple story in an hour and a half, and we need 3 hours to do a complex story. Alright, moving right along, we talked Alex Winter last week with Freaked. This week, Bill and Ted Face the Music. This is another movie I actually saw in theaters in 2020, because I got lucky and I found one nearby me that was actually running it when it came out. So me and my roommate went, screw it! And we went and saw Bill and Ted Face the Music. I really like the Bill and Ted movies. They're great movies. They're fun movies. This one is just as good. Basically, you have Bill and Ted. They are now older. They're married to their princesses, and they have kids. The problem is the Wild Stallions never became big. They never set into course the future. They are eventually visited by Rufus's daughter, who tells them it is almost time for them to do what they are supposed to do, and gives them cryptic information. Bill and Ted then use the time machine to jump forward into the future to figure out what the song is they are supposed to write and perform. So it's them moving forward to figure out when they write the song so they can bring it back to when they need to perform it, trying to cheat their way around it. And it's actually a really fun movie. As this is happening, their 2 teenage daughters, or 20-something daughters, I'm not exactly sure how old the daughters are supposed to be, are kind of doing a more traditional Bill and Ted story with a different phone, with a different time machine, because Bill and Ted have their phone booth, their daughters have more of a weird futuristic-looking time machine, as they are trying to recruit the greatest musicians of history to play in their band, to play in their dad's band. So you get both. You get, this new story for Bill and Ted, and you get the more traditional story with their daughters, which I thought was very well done. Because, they could have just went, well, Bill and Ted are here, but we're going to focus solely on their daughters, because, women. I have no problem with, this one I have no problem. They share the load of being the people who are progressing this story, which is exactly how it should be when you're bringing back old characters and introducing new characters. I loved this movie. To me, it's as good as the first two. It is a great continuation of the story, and I'm really glad Keanu Reeves likes working with his friends so much that he got famous and went, we're making another Bill and Ted movie. Or he got more famous, I guess. Because he was famous, he was Matrix famous, then somehow he got John Wick famous, and that allowed him to do another Bill and Ted movie. So, Bill and Ted Face the Music. Good movie. Next up, we have one I wanted to see in theaters, I just never did. This is The Current War, the director's cut. That is actually pretty important to denote, because the studio hated... I'm not even sure if it is called the director's cut. Right, I thought that was something else. The studio hated the director's original vision of this movie. They edited the movie. Then they couldn't release the movie because I think that studio went bankrupt. The director at a different studio bought the movie, and the director was allowed to recut the movie, but I think the original studio showed it somewhere, so this has to be denoted as a director's cut, even though this is what was shown in theaters when it got its wide release. It's a weird story. That's a weird story. This is a good story. Basically, you have Benedict Cumberbatch, who plays Thomas Edison. And this is about the story of Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse, played by Michael Shannon, who are trying to light the world, give electricity to the world, or the U.S. anyways, and their war on who can control the most, because you have AC power and you have DC power. And it's that historic story. And you also have Nikola Tesla, played by Nicholas Hoult, gets thrown in there too because Nikola Tesla was basically taken advantage by everyone he ever worked for up until he met Westinghouse, when he actually allowed him to really thrive. This is a great movie. There are great performances by everyone. You also have, I'm blanking on his name, so I'm going to have to go this way. Tom Holland plays Edison's assistant. It is a fun movie that looks at a very interesting moment of history that we don't think of that much, and that is we have these two ideas of how to send energy to a house directly, and the questions of how did it happen, how did it grow, and how do we have what we have now, which is kind of a combination of the two. Because one, Edison's required a lot of power stations. However, you could run anything. Whereas Westinghouse's could be done, it just fell, I'm really sad that the disc just fell, could do a more direct with less power stations through lines. However, it sent such a high power source that it really couldn't run stuff like your electric, I'm trying to think of things they would have used back then. An electric sewing machine. That's what I want to think of. So that is The Current War. It's a great movie. If you've never seen it, if you've never heard about it, that is one worth checking out. Kind of wish I had the case, so I might have to do some editing here while I go pick up the case. So that is The Current War. Starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Nicholas Hoult, Michael Shannon, and Tom Holland. Definitely check it out if you've never seen it before. It is worth watching it, and just to see, this war between these men and these ideas of how to give America power. Alright, we are down to the last movie for this video. This is my second place film of 2020 that I saw for the first time, and my favorite one I saw in theaters. That's right, this one is one I saw in theaters, and it is my favorite I saw in theaters. It is The Gentleman, starring Matthew McConaughey, Hugh Grant, the dude from Sons of Anarchy, the main character, whose name I should know, Charlie Hunnam, is also in this. Colin Farrell's in it. This is a great, great movie. I enjoy a good Guy Ritchie film, and this is definitely one of them. Matthew McConaughey plays a drug dealer in England. He's a pot dealer who is kind of being muscled in by some of the other dealers. Charlie Hunnam plays his right hand, and Hugh Grant plays a reporter. Hugh Grant is trying to get a story out of Charlie Hunnam, and so this movie is really told through flashback primarily until like the last portion of it. It's a hard movie to explain now that I'm getting into it, because it's a Guy Ritchie film, so there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of intricacy, but it's a really good movie. I was really surprised when I went to theaters and I watched it, because of just how much I enjoyed it, how much it brought me in to the world that it was building, and how much I enjoyed that. If you've never seen The Gentleman, definitely check it out. Like I said, Colin Farrell's in it as well. He plays basically a gym trainer who some of the kids he's training end up robbing Matthew McConaughey, so he ends up having to sell his services as basically a hired muscle to pay off the debt of his students. It's a fun movie, and it's definitely worth checking out. If you've never seen The Gentleman, definitely give it a go. This is one that I can't say enough good things about. I really enjoyed it. It is my favorite movie I saw in theaters of 2020. Then again, I saw 9 movies in 2020, so that's not saying a lot. And 3 of them we covered: The Hunt, Bill and Ted, The Gentleman. I already said The Invisible Man and Extraordinary were trash, and I honestly cannot think of the other movies I saw for the first time in 20... Oh, Birds of Prey. I saw Sonic. They're not terrible movies. And then there are 2 other ones that are slipping my mind. Oh! Nope. Technically, I saw that one in 2021. Monster Hunter. I think I saw that one in 2021. No. That's the... I saw 10 movies. I saw Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is trash. But yeah, so with that, there's only one movie left. We're going to talk about that next week. So this week we discussed as a review They Live, great classic movie. Justice League Dark, awesome superhero movie. Justice League Dark Apocalypse Wars. Bill and Ted Face the Music. The Current War, great movie, don't drop it on the floor. And The Gentleman, really an awesome movie that came out in 2020. Next week we talk about my favorite movie I saw for the first time in 2020. Don't forget to like this video, share, comment if you've got something to say on one of these 5 awesome movies, or if it's just my general stammering you want to comment on, because I get it, I stammer a lot. But definitely check us out next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to definitely make sure you see that movie. I mean, if you already invested your time in 11 movies of me talking about, you might as well come back next week and invest a little more time, and then we talk about one more movie. I'll see you then.